As the fate of James Crumbley is officially in the hands of the jury, we take a look at his case and how maybe the implications of his wife's previous conviction may affect the outcome of his own trial. I'm Collier Landry. Let's get into it.
Testimony continued today in the most notorious criminal trial in...
When I was 12 years old, my testimony sent my father to prison for murdering my mother. I decided at an early age that our trauma should not be what defines us. It's what we choose to do with it that does. I'm here to share my unique perspective on true crime, mental health, society, and popular culture, albeit with a slight sense of humor. I'm Collier Landry, and welcome to my show. Mover Nation, welcome to another episode. I think we have all technical difficulties solved for today. Welcoming you. I don't know if the verdict has come in yet on the James Crumbley trial or not. I know it's in the hands of the jury. It's 6 o'clock Eastern right now. I'm sure they're probably done for the day. Closing arguments for today. We're going to kind of go over the whole outline of the case if you guys are not familiar. But first, I want to welcome everyone. We had an Oscar challenge this last weekend, and we had a contest for all the channel members, and we have some announcements. So, the envelope, please. Who are our winners of this year's Oscar contest? Drum roll if there was one. Wait a minute. Great news. Collier, you're pre-selected for the MasterCard with 3,000. This isn't the right thing. Anyways, let's get into it. Our first place winner, getting 7 out of 8 categories correct. Cynthia Ann, congratulations. You won a t-shirt. Second place is Marie Hathaway. You have won an official mug of the show. And third place goes to Tana Magnus. Thank you so much for playing, everyone. We will be sending you guys emails on how to redeem your prize for having the best crystal ball and knowing this year's Oscar winners. Congratulations, everyone. Lots to discuss today. This James Crumbley trial has been going on for the past few days. I think today was day 5 of the trial. James Crumbley decided not to testify in his own defense, unlike his wife Jennifer did last month. But we're going to get into that whole thing. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a background. First of all, I also want to say welcome to our new channel subscribers and new channel members, new Patreon members, Josie Walsh and Tana Magnus. Thank you guys so much for joining. Tana Magnus re-upped her yearly membership at the hero level. Thank you so much for your support. I cannot tell you how valuable it is to support this program. Thank you very much. And Josie Walsh joined at the mover level. Thank you so much. Joined just this morning. So thank you again so much for your support. It means the world to me. Just a reminder, this weekend, we are going to have our first ever Collier's AV Club, where we are going to all watch my film, A Murder in Mansfield, on Discord. So there will be a link here to join the Discord. If you are a channel member here on YouTube or you are a Patreon member, you get to access that. And it's going to be really exciting. We'll watch my movie together. It's going to be great. I know you guys have lots of questions and always wonder about my film and how it was made and all that stuff that happened. And I'm going to share all of that with you. I also want to give, I did not talk about this in the last couple of episodes, but a few of you sent in some birthday gifts. I had a birthday a couple of weeks ago. I want to say thank you. I want to showcase those gifts. This is from, so as you guys know, I tend to say oy vey a lot. And this oy vey mug came from Cat Loves Cat Skills, Kathleen Welsh. Thank you so much. And from Karen Fan and Court McNeil, assistant and associate producer here on the program, and just complete executive assistant extraordinaire. The oy vey, I'm muted, oy vey mug. And if you guys tuned in on Sunday, you saw that because nobody can hear me because we had technical difficulties, and this is a one-man band type thing. And so sometimes things get a little wacky, especially when software gets updated on computers. So got this. And then from Tana Magnus as well, who is a resident of the Portland area. She got me this really cool t-shirt. This came in the other day. It says Portland, Oregon. It's obviously backwards, but yeah. Anyways, thank you all so much. And we have a link for you guys if you want to send us fan mail, because we love this. And even if you want to send us MasterCard offers too, and we can pretend like it's an envelope for the Academy Awards, it'll be great. It'll be great. It makes me feel good that the Academy Awards a few years ago didn't even have their own envelopes organized as well. So I don't feel so bad. But yes, Oive, I'm muted. And also a big shout out to On the Outskirts, who bought me a dinner at Cafe Gratitude, which is one of my favorite places here in Venice, California. It is a vegan restaurant, and so she contributed that. And there was a few others as well. Thank you all so much. You made my birthday really special, because other than that, it sucked. But you guys made it special. And Marisol made it special. So I'm very, very grateful to you guys for that. That kind of goes. Okay, so hey, look, the fan mail Nightbot worked. Anyways, lots to go through today, lots to discuss, but thank you all for participating in the Oscar program. And I look forward to seeing everyone this Sunday. I will put a link to all of that in the membership section, but you do need to be signed up for Discord, because we're not going to do this through, we're not going to do any of this through YouTube, because we can't. Just simply enough. We just can't. So thank you. And thank you so much to Gen X Granny for and Court McNeil, Cat Loves Cat Skills, Nightbot, and Karen Fan, all my moderators here on the channel. Thank you very much for all the hard work that you guys do, and welcome Tina Luffman to the party. Anyways, there's all our housekeeping fun stuff for today. We're going to get into the James Crumbley thing. I do need to get into, we have a sponsor we're going to get into a little bit. This week's sponsor of this show is Babbel. We'll be hearing from them in a little bit about a new offer that I have for them. Babbel is a language software. It is awesome. It is on my routine every morning, so I can practice my Espanol, which there will be some Spanish videos coming this summer. I promise. It's going to be a wonderful, fun thing, because many of you tune in from Latin America, and I love my Latinos. So that will be very cool. So, okay, a little bit of background on James Crumbley, Jennifer Crumbley, the Crumbleys in general. As I put in a couple of videos before, were they bad parents or really criminals? So to give a little bit of background, on November 30th, 2021, Ethan Crumbley was responsible for a mass casualty event at Oxford High School that resulted in the loss of life of 4 of his fellow classmates: Justin Schilling, Madison Baldwin, Tate Meyer, and Hannah St. Juliana, as well as injuring 7 other people. He was found guilty in December of 2023 and sentenced to life in prison without parole. He was 17 when he was sentenced to life without parole. In a precedent-setting move, both of Ethan's parents, Jennifer and James Crumbley, were then each charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for their alleged roles in securing the weapon for their son, as well as negligence in securing mental health for their child. So they originally were arrested a few days after the mass casualty incident, I believe December 3rd of 2021. They were found hiding out in an art studio in the Detroit metro area. Ethan's mother, Jennifer, was found guilty on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter in February, so last month of 2024, and her sentencing will be on April 9th, 2024. And just 4 weeks after his wife, Jennifer, was found guilty, James Crumbley now finds himself on trial for the same charges. And today, closing arguments came in, and the case is in the hands of the jury. The trial began on Thursday, March 7th, with the opening statements delivered by prosecutor Mark Keast that focused on, quote, family life within the Crumbley household. He told the jury it would have, quote, given them context to learn that this event didn't just happen out of the blue. Ethan didn't just snap. What happened was foreseeable, especially to his father. The attorney for James Crumbley, Mariel Lehman, said that James did not know his son could potentially harm other people, and that, quote, he did not know that what his son was planning. He did not purchase that gun with the knowledge that his son may use it against other people. Now, a major difference so far in both the trials of the parents is the text conversations between Jennifer and Ethan were ruled inadmissible in James's trial, as the judge does not believe that James Crumbley was aware of these conversations. She also ruled that the text messages between Ethan Crumbley, the shooter, and his friend would also not be included as evidence. And a side note, that those text messages seem to be a really big contributing factor in Jennifer's verdict, because they were read and it made her really look like a negligent parent. So it will be interesting to see how this affects James's case and the verdict moving forward. The only two witnesses were called to testify on the first day. The first witness for the prosecution was Molly Darnell, an educator at Oxford Community School since 1998. She also previously testified that during Jennifer's trial, testified at Jennifer's trial. She was shot once in the arm by Ethan through a closed classroom door. Prosecutor Karen McDonald asked her to go over a map of the school and to describe the event in detail. The defense did not cross-examine her. The second witness was Edward Wagrowski, a former detective and computer crimes analyst for the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, who was there on the day of the event and was responsible for viewing footage from more than 100 cameras in the school. Now, side note, just when they say 100 cameras in school, when I was going through all this back in Jennifer's trial, and then kind of, obviously, mass casualty events at high schools and schools has been something that has been very recent. I think I was either just getting ready to graduate high school when the first mass casualty event occurred here in the United States. But it was not part of the protocol that I went through as a young man. And in high school, it was not something that we discussed openly. We had tornado drills, we had fire drills, but we never had anything that involved protocol, any sort of protocol that involved someone entering the facility with a firearm and opening fire with that firearm on the student body, teachers, whoever in the school. That was never something that I went to school with. And I had interviewed a couple of months ago Elizabeth Stout, who did a podcast, who was a survivor of the Parkland shooting in Parkland, Florida, on Valentine's Day in 2018. And she shared with me just, obviously how horrific the event was. I believe there was 15 individuals whose lives were lost that day. Just terrible, terrible, terrible. Or maybe it was 7. It was more than needed to be. That's for sure. And one of the things she was sharing with me is how obviously she's much younger than I am, and how her growing up, like, that is something that they talked about in school openly. So when I read that, like, this this investigator went through and looked at 100 cameras in the school, I'm thinking to myself, I don't even remember security cameras being in my high school. Obviously that is something that doesn't occur these days, but I mean, wow, it is a real threat. Cat loves Catskill. Cat loves Catskills. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I greatly appreciate it. So I think about this as I read through all of it, like, how things have really changed, right? That this is something that an entire generation has grown up with as their reality, right? There are kids in high school right now. This is all they ever knew. All I ever knew was tornado drills, fire drills. That was it. Now we have these other drills that mass casualty event drills, active shooter drills. Those are things that it's just unfathomable to me that that's something that exists. I mean, I guess it's, a sign that times are changing. But the fact that people are even aware of this and this is a reality they live with is just, it's very heartbreaking to me, to say the least. Yeah. Anyways, so the question has remained always, are they bad parents or criminals? And as like I said, I've done a few other videos on Jennifer Crumbley, who was convicted of all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter last month. And that brings us to, like, is this deja vu again with James Crumbley? So, Edward Rogowski, who testified, was responsible for piecing together all the footage for the investigation and was there to testify on what he saw during that review. He also reviewed phone information and social media data from the Crumbley family. Now, while Rogowski was on the witness stand, James Crumbley's call to 911 was played from the day of the event. The call had been placed at 1:34 p.m., which was after the event itself, but before Ethan had been identified. So he frantically calls 911. He can't find the firearm in the house. He's panicking, thinking that it's his son. We're going to play that in a second. Just a trigger warning. It's very dramatic. Going to play it through the news clip. And perhaps the most dramatic turn of the day one events was when authorities disclosed Crumbley was caught making threatening statements on the phone and in electronic messages. Whether it was over email or text wasn't verified, but I would assume it would be over email, being that he was in custody. He's been in custody again since December 3rd, 2021. So he was making these threats from the Oakland County Jail, which something else that I will talk about much later on in this episode is the fact that none of the family they've all been incarcerated separately and they have not seen or interacted with one another, which I think is a very big deal. But that's for a whole other thing a little bit later. Oakland County Sheriff's Office didn't go into detail about what was said, but have confirmed that his access to phone and electronic messaging has been limited to just his lawyer. So this is a quick little breakdown of the first day of testimony, which we will get into here as I pull this up. Marie Hathaway, thank you so much. You are a big winner. Thank you so much for the super sticker. I appreciate it, or the super chat, or whatever it is. I'm not sure because it doesn't tell me here in my software.
Joining us now, Court TV's Julia Janae. And Julia, welcome back for round 2 of these historic trials. Now, the prosecution calling their first witnesses today. Those witnesses are, as you just heard there, the same ones that took the stand at the trial of the defendant's wife. Now, we just heard Sarah also report about the similarities. Are we going to see the same or a very similar strategy from the prosecution as we did at the shooter's mother's trial?
Brian, good to be with you. Yes, we are going to see an essentially similar case, essentially identical, because that evidence that we saw in Jennifer Crumbley's trial also relates to James Crumbley. So though the arguments may be different in opening statements, closing arguments, the witness information gets us to the same point that these prosecutors want this jury to reach, those involuntary manslaughter charges. But in looking at the text messages, I think there's more to highlight now, something different that jurors in this trial can pull out that they may not have in Jennifer's. In particular, that text message of the school shooter saying that my dad left out the gun, so I thought, why not? That points directly at him knowing that it's his dad's responsibility to lock away guns, even though that was many weeks, months before this school shooting. It's powerful testimony, along with the message from James Crumbley saying to his wife, dude, chill, he's fine, when she was saying he needs help and you need to go pick him up.
All right, let's turn our attention now to the defense side of things. What's going to be their strategy, and what do you think they're going to do the same or differently than the attorney for the shooter's mom? And can we see the father take the stand like his wife did?
That's a big question I have. Will he not take the stand doing something different than his wife did? He may not have as many bombshells that seem to come out from Jennifer Crumbley taking the stand, in particular, the affair that she was involved in and these adult friend finder sites that she was on that could have put her in a negative light in front of this jury, whether or not.
So again, James Crumbley, as we all know, did not take the stand in his own defense, which I think is probably, we'll see what the outcome is. However, he definitely probably did himself a favor by not going into this, because again, this was a whole mess for her.
It was relevant to her actual culpability in this case. But James Crumbley, we don't know how he's going to come across, but we are seeing emotion from him. We saw those tears in the courtroom when the forensic analyst was showing the video of his son being arrested. That may help him if he shows that he was trying to help his son. But I think their best bet is going to be arguing that he's very aloof, that he wasn't very involved in his son's life and the day-to-day affairs, and that's why he didn't notice that there was much more that needed to be done.
We will see how it all plays out, and we will, of course, be checking back with you each day of this trial. Julia Janae with Court TV. Julia, thank you.
So let's play the report about his threats in jail.
This morning, a jaw-dropping twist in the trial.
Oy vey. What can I say? We do not need to do the autoplay. Oh my goodness. All right. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties. There we go.
This morning, a jaw-dropping twist in the trial of a Michigan father charged in his son's school shooting after officials say James Crumbley made threats from inside jail. The Oakland County Sheriff's Office overnight telling NBC News Crumbley's access to a telephone and electronic messaging while in jail has been limited due to threatening statements he made while on the phone and in electronic messages, adding he's now limited to communication with his lawyer. NBC News has reached out to his attorney, who, like the prosecution, is under a gag order. So far, no response.
He was the adult out of anyone in the world in the best position to prevent these kids' deaths.
The order capping day one of testimony in Crumbley's involuntary manslaughter trial, with prosecutors arguing back in 2021, Crumbley ignored warning signs his son Ethan was struggling with his mental health and failed to secure the gun Ethan used to kill 4 classmates at Oxford High School.
Cynthia Ann, did you welcome? I just saw you here in the tech. You realize that you're the big winner from the Oscar ballot. So you are the big winner of the Oscar contest. We will be emailing you how to redeem your prize.
The 47-year-old, using headphones as hearing aids, listened as prosecutors played his frantic 911 call from that day.
I think my son took the gun. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm really freaking out.
We find the defendant guilty.
Crumbley's case coming 1 month after a jury in this same courtroom with the same judge found his wife, Jennifer, guilty of the same charges. This after she testified James was in charge of securing the gun.
I just didn't feel comfortable being in charge of that. It was more his thing.
Crumbley's attorney pushing back.
James Crumbley did not know what his son was going to do.
Now a new jury hearing from many of the same witnesses, including a teacher who testified Ethan shot her.
I could start to feel blood rolling down my arm.
And one looming question kind of looming over all of this is whether or not James Crumbley will sort of follow his wife's lead and testify in his own defense. His attorney has yet to say either way. Meanwhile,
all right, we'll get away from that because we all know that that he did not testify today on his own behalf, which I think was probably a very smart decision on his behalf. Day 2 was Friday, March 8th. Friday, March 8th was the second day of the trial after the cross-examination of Edward Rogowski. Robert Critelas took the stand. Critelas is a latent print supervisor and infield crime scene supervisor with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department forensics lab. When Critelas arrived at the scene that day, he was responsible for locating the firearm as well as processing the crime scene, which was contained to one wing of the school. He went over his 5-page crime scene report and said investigators found 14 fired cartridges in one hallway and an additional 18 fired cartridges in another area. Critelas also testified that Ethan had fired into several classrooms and had fired the weapon 32 times inside the school. There were 18 unfired rounds that had been recovered. Just so you know, and this is probably just a California thing, but we have limited magazine capacity here in California. If you're not aware, California is not exactly the country's most friendly gun state, but we have a limited magazine capacity, which makes a lot of sense. Why should you have to have large capacity magazines to begin with? That's a whole other issue. And I'm pro Second Amendment, but like, let's be responsible. I think it's a little excessive, but we have only 10 cartridge magazines in the state of California. So if those were limited capacity magazines, that means that he had to fire that many rounds would have had to reload 3 times, load, and then reload twice, actually. 32 rounds. So 3 to 10. Yeah. 3 times. Would have to reload 3 times. So that just goes to show the nature of how much time transpired that this happened, but also how intent Ethan was on carrying out this heinous act, this mass casualty event, which is just obviously horrific, right? And the loss of life is so tragic in this situation. So to see to hear this guy testify about this is just, it's terrible. There were 18 unfired rounds that had been recovered. Cammie Back, the office manager of the store where James Crumbley purchased the firearm, testified to selling that firearm on November the 26th, 2021, which was 3 days before the event. The third testimony came from Joe Bryan, a detective sergeant with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office Special Investigations Units. He was assigned to assist in the investigation on that day of the incident. During his testimony, a video was played of Brian and his partner interviewing James and Jennifer on November 30th, 2021. Last up for the day was assistant principal of Oxford High School, Christy Gibson Marshall, who testified she encountered Ethan in the hallway and spoke to him. She said he looked away from her, and it was then she knew that he was the perpetrator because otherwise he would have spoken to her. She also had come across Tate Meyer after he had been harmed and tried to resuscitate him, which is just terrible. Testimony on Friday ended early with Judge Cheryl Matthews, who is the same judge from Jennifer's trial, confirming the trial is running ahead of schedule. Now we will get into a little bit of a wrap up of, I don't know why this auto plays, the second day wrap up.
We begin tonight with more testimony in the trial against the father of the Oxford High School shooter. Thank you so much for joining us for 7 Action News at 6. I'm Carolyn Clifford.
And I'm Mike Duffy. Today, the prosecution working to show Crumbley ignored his son's mental state and instead purchased a firearm. Now, a number of law enforcement agents took the stand today, as well as a gun store clerk and a school administrator.
7 Action News reporter Whitney Burney has more on some of the disturbing evidence revealed in court today.
It was an emotional day in the courtroom, not only for victims' families, but jurors and James Crumbley, as the conversation and line of questioning moved to the gun. As the shooter fired 32 rounds throughout hallways and into classrooms at Oxford High School.
I looked up the hallway and I could see another student look like he was bringing his arm down. My assumption was that was probably the shooter.
School administrator Christy Gibson Marshall says she ran toward the danger, finding student Tate Meyer on the ground.
Was he still alive? I hoped he was. He was very gray, but I started to resuscitate immediately.
The assistant principal, one of 5 people taking the witness stand Friday in the trial against James Crumbley, father of the Oxford High School shooter, who's now facing 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of 4 students. Crumbley emotional as the prosecution played back security footage.
Mr. Crumbley asked to see the 6 hour, said he had had his eye on that for quite some time. And just because he is a familiar face to our store, I looked at him and said, you know the drill, I need your license.
After hearing from an employee at the gun store where James purchased the firearm used, jurors heard from a number of law enforcement agents, including a detective who interviewed the shooter's parents at the police station.
At about 5 minutes and 18 seconds of the interview, James was very clear that they didn't have issues with their son.
Yes.
That he didn't believe that they had been having issues with their son. Is that fair to say?
That's what he said, yes, ma'am.
Earlier in the day, the prosecution worked to show Crumbley could have prevented the shooting, but was careless following a meeting with school administrators a few hours before, where they discussed a disturbing drawing the shooter made. Prosecutors pointed to James returning to work, delivering orders for DoorDash like normal.
When he was accepting these orders and making deliveries, it wasn't outside of Oakland County, was it?
No, it was not.
In fact, where was it?
All local within Oxford.
Within Oxford, okay. And he actually drove by his house at least 4 times from the point that he saw this to the point the shooting started.
That's correct.
But the defense says Crumbley had no reason to suspect he needed to go home looking for a missing firearm. Jurors are due back on Monday at 9 a.m., where testimony will continue. Reporting here in Pontiac, Whitney Burney, 7 Action News.
So something that I was thinking about when I was, preparing to talk about this is there has been a lot of talk recently about there's been some comments made. This is a very political year, obviously. We have a presidential election that's occurring. We have TikTok, which is most likely about ready to be banned by the United States Congress. There we go. They get something done. Apparently they get something done. It just doesn't do us any good. But that's a whole other conversation for a whole other day. One of the things we was talking about is retirement age is come up and people working much later and not retiring at 65 and the sort of that retirement has become an elusive part of the American dream. And I thought about James Crumbley going back and driving DoorDash, which, look, I don't think any person like aspires to be a DoorDash driver or a delivery driver. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's an amazing thing that has been afforded by technology to be able to have it. It rose to prominence during the pandemic, but obviously he's doing it as a form of necessity to supplement other income for his family. And the fact that, they've kind of made an issue out of this, I think is, look, people are just trying to work and survive. And I think one of the unfortunate sort of side notes to all of this, or footnotes to this particular case and Jennifer Crumbley's case, is that parents were just caught up in and overwhelmed with life as well. Obviously, they were negligent. Jennifer Crumbley was negligent. She was carrying on affairs. There were all these things that were happening that they disregarded when it comes to their son, but also the family itself just seemed to be very, very dysfunctional. And it just seems to be that there's just a lot to it. And I thought about this retirement and him driving around and people just trying to make ends meet. It feels like this is just a very unfortunate sort of footnote to this a little bit. I don't know. It's just something that bothered me. I don't know. They seem to make a lot of his DoorDash driving, and I'm like, well, he's the guy. They're just trying to survive, right? People are trying to make ends meet. I don't know if that's fair or not, but obviously there's a severe amount of negligence when it comes to their son and the firearm. But it does feel that it's a little unfair when they try to paint him in that sort of light, because it's people just trying to make ends meet. That's my opinion. Day 3 on Monday, March 11th. Day 3 kicked off on Monday with testimony by Sean Hopkins, a counselor at Oxford High School. He was Ethan's counselor. During his testimony, emails from the spring and fall of 2021 were shown from 2 of Ethan's teachers who had reached out to Hopkins expressing their concerns about Ethan's behavior in the classroom. A Spanish teacher contacted him on November the 10th, 2021, indicating that Ethan was having a rough time and she hoped that Hopkins would be able to speak to him. Hopkins testified that he found Ethan in between classes and told him that if he needed to talk, that Hopkins was available. He also indicated that he did not contact the boy's parents at that time because the only information he had was that Ethan was sad, which unfortunately is not unusual. However, he was a Spanish teacher, and if you are considering learning a new language, I want you guys to hear from my sponsor. Today's video sponsor, Babbel. Hey movers, did you know that 1 in 5 Americans has learn a new language on their bucket list? If you're one of them, make 2024 the year you finally check it off with Babbel. the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Designed by over 150 language experts, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are your passport to speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Real people, real conversations. That's the Babbel way. Babbel's tips and tools are not just lessons. They're companions in real-life situations. The approachable, accessible content is delivered through conversation-based teaching, ensuring you're ready to shine in the real world. Before Babbel, I couldn't imagine effortlessly ordering food, asking for directions, or chatting with local merchants, and all without consistently checking a language app while I'm on vacation. But Babbel makes it easy, providing the practical skills you need for real-life scenarios. Struggling with pronunciation? Babbel's got your back with speech recognition technology, helping you perfect your accent and sound like a native speaker in no time.
Hola.
Hola. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 50% off a one-time payment for a lifetime Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/Collier. Get 50% off at babbel.com/Collier, spelled BABBEL.com/Collier. Rules and restrictions may apply. Gracias por ver este video. Dale me gusta y suscríbete. There you go. Thank you for taking a moment to watch that video. I appreciate it. On November the 29th, 2021, Hopkins received another email from a teacher indicating that they had seen Ethan looking at pictures of bullets on his phone, and a third teacher had sent Hopkins an email saying that Ethan was watching, quote, videos on his phone of a guy gunning people down. It was at that point he contacted Jennifer and James Crumbley. He went on to talk about the in-person meeting that he had with them on November the 30th, 2021, which was the day of the mass casualty event, and how he had told the Crumbleys that he would like Ethan to get support outside of school and to have someone to talk to. He wanted to see the parents get their son mental health support within 48 hours, and he had planned on speaking with Ethan the next morning had the incident not happened later on that day. If there had not been a plan in place at that point, he testified he planned to contact Child Protective Services because everyone was obviously concerned with Ethan's mental health and what he was going through and his sort of parents and, negligence in dealing with him. Which I don't blame them. I really don't. I don't blame these teachers having this concern and looking at the parents and saying, you don't care about your kid. Obviously, again, this whole thing is just, it's just a perfect storm of negligence and neglect of your child and not being involved in your child's life. In my opinion, look, I'm not a parent. I'm not here to pontificate on parents, but I really do, as I had initially said before, are they bad parents or are they criminals? Obviously both. And this is what makes this whole thing so tough. Hopkins said that on a quote surface level, it appeared that James Crumbley was showing the appropriate level of care for his son by saying to him that there are, quote, people you can talk to, you have a counselor, you have your journal, we talk. The second witness was Nicholas Ejak, a former dean of students at Oxford High School. He testified his primary responsibility was ensuring the code of conduct was followed by students and that the parents' decision to not take Ethan out of class was atypical for the situation. He testified, quote, my understanding and expectation was that based on the recommendation from the counselor that the student would be leaving that day, Ejak had said. Based on prior experiences at schools where parents are called in to talk about student mental health, typically they leave when it's suggested that they do leave. He also testified that he brought Ethan's backpack to him after the meeting, even making a joke at how heavy it was, but stated there was no reasonable suspicion to search the bag. Again, this is the bag that Ethan Crumbley had brought to the school that contained the weapon that was involved in the mass casualty event at Oxford High School. Again, and I talked about this in the Jennifer Crumbley trial last month is, the bag was never searched. There was no discussion of, is there a firearm in the bag? Why there, there seems to be blood on a lot of people's hands in this situation. I mean, obviously the parents are on trial, but why didn't anyone just choose to look through this bag? I mean, I had my locker tossed twice when I was in high school and they found nothing, but it's not atypical to have your stuff having gone through by your school superiors. I mean, maybe that's something that maybe I'm out of touch in that way. Maybe that was just when I went to high school, like we just was like, okay, well, there's the locker. You're going to go through it. Okay, great. Maybe maybe things aren't that way anymore. I don't know. But when things like this are something that's unfortunately a regular occurrence in our society, I would think that people would be a little more judicious and a little more hyper vigilant in the schools to make sure that this doesn't happen. Like, oh, maybe let's search his backpack. He's making drawings about firearms. He's looking at bullets. Is there a reason to maybe suspect, oh, the bag is heavy? Why is the bag heavy? What do you have in here that's heavy? Is it books? It feels like it just seems to be, I don't know. Third up, okay, so he testified again. There was no reasonable suspicion to search the bag. He said, quote, "You have to remember, I knew very little of what we all know today," Ejak said. "So when we're looking at the big picture of today, I only knew a fraction of what we all know." Hindsight is 2020, but again, I don't understand. Third up was Brett Brandon, a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives. He testified that he had been part of hundreds of shooting investigations and that during the investigation, he reviewed cell phones, social media, financial information, and fire records and surveillance footage. He confirmed that James and Ethan visited the gun range 6 times together in the months prior to the attack. And this is the news takeaway, which we will watch. Boy. This is from, again, our friends over at Click On 4, Detroit local WDIV.
This afternoon, testimony in the James Crumbley trial centered around the shooter's access to guns.
Yeah, Kristen McDonald is anchoring our coverage all day on Local 4 Plus. She's here now with some key takeaways from the courtroom. Hey there, Kristen.
Hey, Damon and Karen, part of the prosecution's case against James Crumbley hinges on the guns that were in the home. He bought them. It was his job to keep them secure. But today there were some difficult moments in court as we saw video of the shooter going to gun ranges, firing guns with his parents. Go ahead and take a look. As jarring as it is to see that, and I'm sure it was for so many families of Oxford high school students, it is not illegal for a minor to shoot guns at a range with parental supervision. And we did see this video come up in Jennifer Crumbley's trial as well.
Now, side note, I did mention that I live in California and firing ranges, and this is a very, we're not a very pro-gun state here in California, but I used to go to a place called the Firing Line in Burbank, California, literally right next to all the studios and the Costco over there. And I remember being in, if you've never been to a firing range, it can be a little jarring because, people were there with firearms and there were kids there and it was just nothing unusual. And obviously you follow protocol, you have to do this, but it can be a little scary, but obviously, you want to have an education on how to properly use these things as well. Look, this is the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio. Firearms are a big part of, people hunt, home safety, things like that. You live on a big property, the things happen, right? And it's a part of the culture. Educating a child or anyone on how to properly use them. I don't think this is a bad thing myself. I look at this and I go, well, they're just, they are just, trying to educate their son. I mean, obviously we know what the outcome was, but I don't necessarily fault the parents for taking their son to a firing range to educate them on how to use a firearm. I don't, but that's just me. That's my opinion. Obviously, again, we didn't know that all these things were going to occur.
But the prosecution was also showing that the shooter sent a video to a friend at 12:30 in the morning back on August of 21. As you see right there, he was loading this gun inside of his home, and he sent this text message to the friend saying, "My dad left it out and thought, why not? LOL." ATF agent Brett Brand.
However, therein lies the crux of all of this, which I think is the prosecution is obviously, and this will, hinge on whatever the jury decides. But again, this is where the key thing is. And you heard the 911 call we played a little bit ago. The firearm was not secured in the home. And which was mentioned in Jennifer Crumbley's trial, was they never even set the combination for the gun safe where the firearm was kept that they had just purchased a few days earlier. It was set to 000, so it was easy to access it. And again, that is the thing that I think is the fault. It's not taking him and educating about the firearm. It's the fact that the firearm was not secured in the home and there was a minor in the home. That's a big problem to me. I grew up in Ohio. There were firearms in my house. They were in a safe. They were locked up. There was no access to those. I remember my mother, when I was living with my birth parents, my mother had a shotgun in the closet that she had, and I think my grandfather had given it to her when she was in her late teens, early 20s for her first apartment. Too bad she didn't use it on my father, but that's another story. But again, that was the only time that I had ever experienced a firearm not being locked up. But again, there was no ammunition as far as I knew, and I think that was probably locked up. But when I was adopted, I was raised in a family, and there were firearms in the house, and they were literally kept in a safe. Like you weren't getting those. There's no way you were having access to those. So, I think if you are going to teach your son how to fire a firearm, you need to keep that firearm, especially at 15 years old. There's no reason for him to have access to it. That is, again, my opinion. I am like, look, as I say on this, I am not a lawyer. I'm not a psychologist. I do not work in law enforcement. I am just a guy who's been through a lot of shit. But in my opinion, and I'm not a parent, in my opinion, there's no reason for the kid to have access to a firearm unless an adult was present. And I think that is the crux of all of this and their case and the case against Jennifer Crumbley. That is the thing. Oy vey, as we say. Getting back to this. Oh, just kidding.
Brandon picks it up from there with questions from prosecutor Karen. LOL. This text message to the friend saying, "My dad left it out and thought, why not? LOL." ATF agent Brett Brandon picks it up from there with questions from prosecutor Karen McDonald.
Talk to me about this video, Special Agent Brandon, and what your view is on the safe, whether or not what was happening in that video was safe.
So I would say that regardless if Mr. Crumbley was standing over his shoulder or not, that would not be safe. The firearm is on top of a dining room table. It's loaded, the safety's off, and it's pointed in a direction that if you're inside their home, you can't tell from the video whether he's facing the front of the home or the side of the home. But regardless, the firearm's pointed at a direction that would be almost chest level if a person was beyond the walls of the house or if a person was standing nearby. Not to mention almost, pointing the firearm at the cat.
And again, if the prosecution is trying to show gross negligence here, this is the larger picture they're trying to paint. GPS shows that James Crumbley was home at the time that video was taken, and the text message was sent in August of 2021. Agent Brandon also talked about the gun lock that came with the murder weapon that was used at Oxford High School. It was a coil lock, and it was inside of a baggie that they showed today.
Yeah,
and he said if it had been taken in and out, of course, it had been opened, but if it had been used multiple times, that bag would have been a lot more ripped up, and it would would have shown a lot more use. And again, that lock for the 9mm was actually found in another gun box in another location inside of the home. So that's kind of the key testimony today about gun possession, really, and access in the Crumbleys home. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we're going to pull some more testimony for you. If you missed it today, it is the school counselor, Sean Hopkins, talking about how he interfered.
Yeah, and so for those of you, those little coil locks, they go right through, and they go through the chamber, and they go through where the magazine goes, and it locks and prevents it from being loaded and being used. A standard thing. They come with all the firearms that you have to purchase in California, so obviously they should come with other ones. I don't know. That's hey, that's my opinion. Again, bad parents are criminals. I don't know. But it's deja vu all over again with James Crumbley. So that brings us to day 4, which was yesterday. Several witnesses testified on day 4 of the trial, but not before prosecutors played surveillance footage of the event from November 30th, 2021. It was quiet in the courtroom, and many jurors were visibly upset, wiping their eyes with tissues and hands over their mouths as the video played. Also showing signs of emotion during the playing of the video was James Crumbley, who was unable to watch and ended up turning away. Prosecutors also showed images from Ethan's journal as Detective Timothy Willis read passages out loud. What's interesting is, I believe in Jennifer Crumbley's trial, she was excoriated by the judge for crying and showing emotion in the courtroom initially, when they were playing any of these videos, and when they were talking about this. She had a lot of emotional reactions, and she was, again, excoriated for having an emotional reaction, which I think was, I thought the fact that she was being chastised, and this is the same judge again from Jennifer Crumbley's trial. I thought the fact that she was being chastised and then James Crumbley turning away was okay. I find that a little bit strange, but that's just an aside here. The same prosecutors showed images from Ethan's journal as Detective Timothy Willis read passages aloud. This same evidence was read during Jennifer's trial and included passages such as, "I want help, but my parents don't listen to me, so I can't get any help," or "I'm about to shoot up the school and spend the rest of my life in prison," and, quote, "I am fully committed to this now, so yeah, I'm going to prison for life, and many people have about 1 day left to live." What wasn't shown during Jennifer's trial was further entries indicating that Ethan wanted to get the 9mm from his father, but couldn't and would have to wait. This is another video explaining the key takeaways from that day 4, and those passages which had been entered into that journal. And here we are.
The prosecution is close to resting in the trial of James Crumbley.
Yeah, late this afternoon, we heard more from investigators about the shooter's state of mind and his parents' involvement. Christy McDonald is anchoring our coverage on Local 4+. She joins us now with some testimony that stood out. Hey there, Christy.
Hi, Damon and Karen. At day 4 of James Crumbley's trial, and most of it today, the testimony centered around what happened after the shooting until the last witness took the stand, and that's when they brought in the shooter's journal. And I want to focus on that because the defense tried to keep this journal out of this trial, but the judge allowed it. And we have seen some of the entries before, and some of them very disturbing, but we saw some new ones today that mention his dad, James, and access to that 9mm Sig Sauer that ended up being the murder weapon at Oxford High School. So go ahead and take a look at some of these first entries. They have to do with asking for help for his mental health. We've seen this one before, and how his parents didn't give it to him, how they don't listen to him, and how that is causing him to shoot up the school. But then Lieutenant Timothy Willis from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department read through more entries about the shooter wanting the gun and getting it from his dad.
All I need is my 9mm pistol, which I am currently begging my dad for.
And page 22.
This
is the binding, right?
The binding, correct.
Go ahead.
I will have to find where my dad hid my 9mm before I can shoot the school. Unfortunately, my dad does not want me to get the 9mm gun, and we are having financial problems, RN for right now, and I don't have a job. So now because I want to do the shooting with a 9mm pistol, as they are effective for killing. But RN right now, all I got is a puny 22 LR Keltec that I don't know where my dad hid it.
That's really tough to hear. Also to hear about the kid, you know, I mean, obviously this wasn't a very stable family. I mean, obviously financial issues, financial problems. He's aware of it. There's so many mitigating factors surrounding this young man's mental stability, mental health, the whole family unit in general. It's like a perfect storm. And again, I know that this can be sort of a divisive issue with a lot of people because the parents are being charged for what they feel are the actions of the child. Some people want to boil it down to make it that simply like, oh, well, the kid, you know, if your kid hits somebody with a car, then you're at fault too. This is not the same thing. Like, let's not conflate the two. But I think it does present this as maybe potentially a cautionary tale for families that are maybe experiencing this type of these types of problems and mental health challenges with their children, because you shouldn't enable them or allow them to have access to something. You should, or if you have something like this in the home, perhaps make sure it is kept under lock and key. The proper safety mechanisms are put in place, and maybe pay a little bit more attention. I mean, again, this is so unfortunate for everyone involved at the end of the day. For innocent children's lives were taken and others were injured in this, and those children, those families will never have those opportunities to grow and learn and love and be together because of the negligence that has been experienced. And this is obviously already proven with Jennifer Crumbley's verdict on the 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. The jury is obviously still out here on James Crumbley, but this is the same sort of thing. And to hear this is just the journal is just really, really heartbreaking. It's like a cry for help.
Hard to see some of those text messages or journal messages. And again, you can only imagine a lot of the families from Oxford High School who are watching this and seeing.
I guess she's going to say the same thing I just said.
We then saw journal entries where tomorrow. All right, there was a total of 6 witnesses for the prosecution today. And what we like to do at the end of the day is pull what we think is the testimony of the day. If you have missed any of it, of the detectives, see pictures inside tomorrow morning of the trial.
All right, so no testimony of the day. So the jury was also shown footage of the Crumbleys arriving at the building in Detroit where they were ultimately arrested. It shows that James reparked the vehicle backing into the space after they were charged earlier that afternoon. Prosecutor Mark Keast asked Willis, quote, when it became clear that they hadn't turned themselves in, was their license plate made public? Willis said it had, and he added that oftentimes fugitives will back into a spot to, one, attempt to hide their license plate, and that it also makes it easier to get away if necessary. So this again was done to establish intent that that they were trying to evade authorities, which is something that the Crumbleys had argued and was argued in Jennifer Crumbley's trial, that they were trying to turn themselves in the next morning. Again, I think they're trying to show the intent of that they had no intention of turning themselves in because they were hiding the license plate, and then it was easier for them to get out. Who knows? Who knows? Again, this is all in the hands of the jury, so we'll see what they come back with. Keast asked if Willis knew if there were any plans for them to turn themselves in that day, and Willis said no. So far, the trial witnesses' evidence and testimony have been fairly similar to Jennifer's trial, but one thing that the jurors had seen on Tuesday of the James's trial that did not see was a clip of law enforcement when the couple was arrested at by a Detroit tactical team while sleeping in an art gallery in Detroit. James can be overheard telling officers, "We're leaving at 7 a.m. The defense referenced this as the time the Crumbleys were intending to leave the building to meet their lawyers in court, as they had planned to turn themselves in. Now, this was during Jennifer Crumbley's trial. She had said they took 4 Xanaxes to fall asleep that night, which seemed a little excessive to me, but hey, just had a friend in a rehab for Xanax addiction, so I wouldn't recommend it. But 4 Xanaxes nonetheless. This goes against the prosecution's narrative that the couple was on the run because they had, quote, knew they had done something wrong. The Crumbleys maintained that they feared being in their home due to threats they had received, but they had been in touch with lawyers and had always planned to turn themselves in. Detroit police officer David Metzke testified that on December 3rd, 2021, he had been called to locate, quote, 2 fugitives. He said the team breached the doors of the art gallery and found the Crumbleys on the first floor. The body cam footage shows the couple being arrested without incident, and Metzke agreed under cross-examination that they didn't appear to be hiding from the police and no weapons were found. Jurors were then shown photos from the building where the couple was found. They included a food on a table, a mattress, clothes, plastic cups, a hotel room key, a backpack, 4 cell phones, medication, and over $6,600 in cash. The jury also saw photos of Ethan's bedroom where two used shooting targets of human silhouettes hung over his bed and empty shell casings littered across his nightstand. There was an empty whiskey bottle on the floor, and on the bed was a notebook with drawings of a gun. There was an empty gun case and a box of ammunition on the bed as well. That case was the one for the handgun that James had purchased only a few days before. Adam Stoyak, a detective with the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, testified that the room had been found that way and that James Crumbley had been cooperative during the search. Luke Kirtley, who owns a coffee shop, also testified that he was the one who spotted the couple in December of 2021 and had called 911. And we have more footage to share.
The focus was on what happened after Ethan Crumbley's deadly rampage at Oxford High School. Several police officers testified how they captured the Crumbleys after they went on the run in the days following the mass shooting. A Detroit business owner took the stand, telling the jury he saw the Crumbleys' car in the parking lot. A car enthusiast, Luke Kirtley, says he recognized it as a new Kia. He then matched the plate to the Facebook post he had seen and also saw someone near the car.
They stayed kind of like turned around with their hood up. I saw them, and then I turned my flashlight off and headed back into the building.
Okay. What did you do next?
So I walked into the building, quickly, briskly headed into my unit, locked all the doors. The lights were off at the time, so I kept the lights off and then called 911.
James Crumbley is charged with 4 counts of manslaughter, 1 for each of the students killed. Jennifer Crumbley will be sentenced next month also on manslaughter charges. Starting this month.
Emotion.
So, in a note from Cat Loves Catskills, thank you so much. They just announced the jury went home for the night after deliberating for 1.5 hours, back in the morning to continue deliberation. So I will keep you all posted. Mover Nation, we will keep you posted on any developments tomorrow morning. So yeah. And Court McNeil says, this guy shouldn't look like it's Chris. Are you referring to the coffee shop owner that seems to be very elated to be on the witness stand? Yeah, he looked like he was in a good mood for whatever reason. I wouldn't be, that's for sure. Okay, so let's catch up to what happened today. Day 5, March 13th, 2024. The prosecution officially rested their case at 9:30 a.m. this morning, and the defense called their first and only witness, Karen Crumbley, who is James Crumbley's sister. Karen lives in Florida and testified she saw her brother and nephew at a funeral. At the funeral service for their mother on April of 2021. She was asked if James had expressed any concerns over his son at that time, to which she responded, no. During their cross-examination, the prosecution attempted to illustrate that the siblings weren't that close and went over call logs and text messages that indicated they only had 3 actual phone calls in 2021, and they only had 22 text messages between them that year as well. Well, I guess I better start texting my own brother and saying, Levi, we only text about basketball things. Maybe I should be like, hey man, how are you doing? How is your mental health? How is stuff going on? I don't know. Maybe I should have. Maybe that's a call for me to have more text messages going on with my own sibling. Maybe I should do that. They really dig in, don't they? She said that she saw the guns in the home in June of 2021 when visiting and when asked her opinion, say that she thought it would be concerning if one was purchased for the child to use at their leisure, but saw no problem with it if it's under adult supervision, which I think pretty much anybody would be. After she was excused, the defense said that they had no more witnesses, and the judge announced closing arguments would begin at 12:30 p.m. James Crumbley was asked and declined to testify on his own behalf. Again, I think probably the smartest thing this man has done recently is not testifying on his own behalf, because I'm pretty sure that's what sealed Jennifer Crumbley's fate. She did not appear to be very remorseful. And welcome Caroline K from Michigan. Thank you very much. But yes, I think the biggest thing in Jennifer Crumbley that sealed her fate in her own trial was the fact that when she was on the witness stand, she appeared to be very aloof. She appeared to be very unremorseful, unaffected by the testimony that she was giving. She, again, was like, well, James is the one who took care of the gun. I didn't really want to talk about it. Like, she just appeared aloof, and she didn't, and just sort of unsympathetic. Like, even though you think that you're like looking at her and you're going, oh, man, she seems to be, she's got to be in pain. Her son did this. She just seemed very hardened and very kind of cold and callous. And I don't think that played well with the jury. So I think the fact that James Crumbley was tearing up and couldn't watch the video of what had gone on in the school and then not taking the witness stand is probably the smartest thing. I will be interested to see how this verdict plays out. But getting back to his sister's testimony, after she was excused, the defense had said there was no more witnesses, and the judge announced closing arguments would begin at 12:30. James Crumbley was asked and declined to testify. I already said this. Okay. The major theme of the prosecution's closing arguments was that the event was foreseeable and preventable by Ethan's father. They did clarify, though, that they don't believe James knew the scale of what was intended, but he was negligent in the fact that he downplayed the severity of his son's cries for help. This is interesting because they really pinned everything on Jennifer Crumbley. So for the prosecution to sort of concede that he didn't really know the scale of what was going to happen, but he was still negligent at the fact that he downplayed the severity of his son's cries for help. She also warned the jury to beware of the defense's argument that this could be you, going on to say that this couldn't be everybody. James Crumbley has been charged due to extremely specific circumstances and his alleged ability to have foreseen dangerous behavior from his son. Defense's closing arguments began by saying that mass events such as this are an epidemic in this country, and that no one, least of all James Crumbley, is disputing the horrific impact of this. But, quote, this case is not about what happened inside Oxford High School. This case is about what happened outside. This case is about what James Crumbley knew on and before November 30th, 2021. Still, the prosecution wants you to find that James could foresee that his son was a danger to others and that James acted in a grossly negligent manner or breached a duty that he owed to other people, despite having no information at the time. The defense reminded jurors that they would have to find James Crumbley guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, which is significantly high, which is a significantly high level of burden, and that absence of evidence from the prosecution can serve as reasonable doubt as they deliberate. So, Mover Nation, what do we think? I think the first thing is, based upon those closing arguments, that James Crumbley's attorney is much better, much more effective than Jennifer Crumbley's attorney was. I realized that Jennifer Crumbley's attorney had represented high-profile people, such as Dr. Larry Nassar. And we all know that Dr. Larry Nassar is rightfully doing like 130 years in prison for his heinous acts. I felt like Jennifer Crumbley's attorney, and you can watch my other videos on this. There are links in the description of today's episode. Jennifer Crumbley's attorney quoting the Taylor Swift songs and things like that. It felt like it was much more of a staged, sort of orchestrated event in the courtroom. And in my opinion, again, I am not a lawyer. I am not a psychologist. I do not work in law enforcement. I'm just a guy who's been through a lot of shit. My opinion is that whoever James Crumbley's lawyer is decided to do away with all the theatrics and all the hyperbole and all of the histrionics that Jennifer Crumbley's attorney decided to partake in during the trial. And I think, honestly, look, this will probably serve him a lot better. I think it would be very hard. You're talking about reasonable doubt, beyond reasonable doubt, that he was negligent in this way, again, with the prosecution conceding that he did not have a crystal ball knowing that his son was going to do this, but it didn't matter. I think that's a really big sort of linchpin in this argument of his guilt. And again, by his decision not to take the witness stand, to not be caught up in the histrionics of all of this, I think was a very smart decision on his part. Again, we'll see what the jury comes back with. I think my overall perception of this, if I was a betting man, I would bet that he is not found guilty. That's my thought, just based upon how the conduct of the trial has gone. Again, I thought Jennifer Crumbley's lawyer, and I do not know what her name is, I thought her histrionics and her hyperbole, her hyperbolic sort of tone and nature in the courtroom, and her sort of, she was argumentative a lot of times. I felt like that even at the time was of no service to Jennifer Crumbley's case. And the fact that she allowed her client to go on the witness stand and testify on her behalf, I thought was insane. And again, last person she represented high profile people like Dr. Larry Nassar, who's doing like 1 million years in prison. So 130 years, and rightfully so. Again, I don't have a crystal ball here again. And I do feel like James Crumbley was negligent, obviously, but I feel like the presentation of this whole situation, he has a much better shot, at least I think, than Jennifer Crumbley. But that's just my opinion. And again, and let's not deviate from the fact that at the end of the day, that the lives of 4 young people were taken on the day of November 30th, 2021. Justin Schilling, Madison Baldwin, Tate Mirror, and Hannah St. Juliana, who are no longer with us. And those families have been so affected by the negligence of the Crumbleys, by the heinous act of Ethan Crumbley. And again, nobody wins in this situation. Nobody wins. Everybody loses. The whole community is traumatized. The families don't get their children back. The whole thing. This is an unfortunate situation, no matter how you spin it, no matter how you look at it. It's all very unnecessary, unfortunately, that this just had to go down like this. And these things, I think, at the end of the day, this could have been preventable had the parents just maybe exercised a little bit more caution than they did, because everyone was affected. And that's my takeaway on all of this. But again, we'll see. We shall see what happens. I want to say thank you to all my channel members, All my channel subscribers, my Patreon supporters, thank you all so much. Congratulations to Cynthia Ann, first place in our Oscar contest, second place Marie Hathaway, and third place Tawna Magnus. Thank you guys so much. And new Patreon members, Josie Walsh and Tawna Magnus, who signed up for the year. Thank you all so much. Your support means the world to me. If you want to join this our channel membership, you can click below, become a channel member. We are going to do a live screening this Sunday night of my film, A Murder in Mansfield, on our Discord. We're going to put the Discord in the link here. You can sign up. You don't have to be a channel member or a Patreon subscriber to join the Discord, but to gain access to the membership perks, you do have to be a member, and you have to be a member to be able to watch the film with all of us. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be a watch party. It's Collier's AV Club. We are launching it this month. It is March 2024. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Mover Nation, we get through another one. It's going to be exciting. Next several months, we're going to introduce a lot more content on this channel. I'm reworking the intros to these episodes and reworking our content strategy over here as we all continue to grow, as we approach 40,000 subscribers. Thank you all so much. I appreciate it. And please, if you wouldn't mind, check out our sponsor today, Babbel. If you are interested in learning a new language, is the best, most convenient way to do so. Mover Nation, we get through another one. On that note, I'm Collier Landry. I'll see you on the next one.
This podcast is made possible by support from listeners just like you. For exclusive content around this podcast, please consider supporting me via Patreon by going to collierlandry.com/support. Please subscribe via Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts from, and please leave us a 5-star review. If you want to see video episodes of this podcast, please check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/collierlandry. You can find links to additional resources in the show notes of today's episode. This podcast is a production of Don't Touch My Radio. Copyright Collier Landry.